An unwanted pregnancy forced me into marriage. What I did not expect was that my husband had deliberately orchestrated it so his mistress could be promoted to director. I did not cry. I only moved in silence. A few days later, he went pale when he saw me in a tailored suit, sitting in the executive office. I stood paralyzed in front of the door to VIP room 608, my hand clutching the cold keys to my Audi. My knuckles were white from the force of my grip. The hallway of the Eclipse Club was submerged in a dim gloom of purple and red lights. The smell of stale tobacco mixed with a cloying air freshener, creating an atmosphere so suffocating it induced nausea. At this hour, I should have been at home, curled up under a warm blanket, sipping a relaxing herbal tea, specially made for expectant mothers. But the call at 10 o'clock at night from Tyler, David's best friend, had dragged me out of the house. Tyler told me that David was too drunk to drive and asked me to come pick him up. Like an attentive fiancé, carrying his child in my womb, I did not hesitate despite the cold and wind of the night in the city. I hurriedly threw on a thick coat and drove over there. I was about to push the door open to enter, but a strident voice, amplified by the powerful speakers inside, filtered through the crack and nailed my feet to the cold marble floor. "Hey, David, I'm asking you seriously." Tyler's voice sounded thick, clearly intoxicated, while the clinking of glass tumblers resonated. "Do you really plan to marry that old maid? I mean, that chick from marketing, Courtney, is clinging to you like a barnacle. She is smoking hot, dude. It would be a waste to let her go." My heart skipped a beat, not from excitement, but from a bad feeling telling me that something terrible was about to happen. I held my breath, pressed myself against the velvet-lined wall, and sharpened my hearing. Then I heard David's familiar mocking laugh. That half-smile that I used to find so masculine and seductive now sounded calculating and contemptuous. "Do you think I'm an idiot to step into that cage for love?" David took a drag from a cigarette. His voice turned deep, full of smugness. "Ashley is already 33 years old. At that age, women are desperate for a husband and a child, like a desert waiting for rain. I just had to be a little attentive, say a few sweet things, and she swallowed it all. So, you are marrying her for the department director position, right?" Tyler let out a loud laugh. "Well, of course, why else?" David slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed sharply. "She is my strongest rival for the next promotion. Ashley is no fool, and old man Garrison, the guy from the real estate firm, trusts her completely. If I competed fairly, I'm not sure I could beat her. And Courtney? No way in hell would she have a chance." Outside, my entire body trembled, not from the cold, but from a deep nausea rising from my stomach. The man I had loved for 2 years, the one who had knelt down to propose just a month ago, turned out to consider me a chess piece, an obstacle that had to be eliminated. What a scumbag. "You are a strategist." Applause could be heard, mixed with the guffaws of the group of men in the room. "And what about the pregnancy? I heard she is knocked up. Do you plan to raise another man's child? Or what are you going to do?" "It is my son. Who else's would it be?" David interrupted him, with a naturalness that froze my blood. But that was my masterstroke. I had to poke holes in the condoms secretly for 2 months to get her pregnant. A woman, no matter how brilliant and fierce she is, becomes as tame as a puppy the moment she has a child. I will convince her to quit her job to take care of him. By the time she has spent a few years at home changing diapers, her brain will have atrophied. By then I will be well settled in the director position, and Courtney will have been promoted to section head. I have already won this game. Every word from David was like a poisoned needle stabbing into my eardrums. I did not feel dizzy, nor did I see the world spin like in soap operas. On the contrary, my mind became incredibly clear, a cold and terrifying clarity. I am Ashley Miller, commercial director of the Valoria Group, the woman who has personally closed million-dollar contracts. I am not the type of weak woman who crumbles, cries, or faints in the face of problems. Years in the business world have taught me one thing. In the face of betrayal, emotions are the most useless thing. Only reason can save you. And what about Courtney? What do you plan to do with her? Tyler asked with a mix of curiosity and morbid interest. Courtney is the light of my life, the woman I truly love. David's voice softened, with a tenderness he had never dedicated to me, not even in our most intimate moments. She is innocent, fragile. Life has treated her very badly. If I do not protect her, who will? On the other hand, Ashley is too strong, too independent. I feel pressured by her side. Damn it, I will marry Ashley so she can take care of the house and the kids. Meanwhile, I will take care of Courtney's career. A man with several women isn't that rare. I bit my lower lip so hard it bled. The metallic taste in my mouth reminded me that this was not a nightmare, but the raw and cruel reality. It turns out his attention, his care, the chicken soups he made me, his promises of eternal love. Everything was a meticulously planned theater play to sabotage my career and pave the way for his mistress. He was using my maternal instinct to lock me within the four walls of a kitchen, to transform a proud eagle into a canary with broken wings inside a cage. I looked at the keys in my hand and then at the heavy limba wood door. I could burst in there, throw a glass of wine in his face, slap him hard enough to leave a mark on his cheek, and unmask his miserable facade in front of his friends. That would be the reaction of a normal wounded woman, but I am Ashley. I never fight a battle I am not certain of winning, and much less do I let my enemy see me lose my composure. I took a deep breath, regulating my pulse. I turned around and walked away in silence in my flat shoes. The carpet in the hallway muffled my steps just as I was swallowing the pain inside me. When I reached the reception, the employee greeted me with a nod. "Did you find your husband, ma'am?" I smiled. A perfect social smile without a trace of a crack. "My husband is in the middle of an important business meeting. I do not want to disturb him. Could you take a bottle of the most expensive whiskey you have to room 608? Charge it all to his account, please." "Of course, ma'am." I left the premises. The night wind of the city hit my face, freezing. I opened the car door. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The face of the woman in the mirror was still attractive and defined, but her eyes no longer held the happy shine from that same afternoon. In its place, there was a gaze as sharp and deep as a frozen lake in winter. "David, you want to play the victim? You want to use our son to tie me down? All right. You set up this stage and I will act with you until the end. Only, from now on, I rewrite the script, and the ending that awaits you, I assure you, will not be the happy ending you dream of." I started the car. The Audi glided smoothly through the deserted streets, leaving behind the sordid lights of the Eclipse Club and also leaving behind the blind love of a youth that had just died. The drive back to the luxurious penthouse overlooking the river felt eternal. The yellowish streetlights projected trembling spots of light onto the windshield. I gripped the steering wheel tight. Memories of the last 2 years flashed through my mind like a movie in slow motion, every image sharp and painful. I met David when he joined as the Deputy Director of Operations at the headquarters. Back then, he bragged about being the nephew of the influential Owens family. His look of an educated intellectual and his humble and respectful way of speaking quickly won everyone's sympathy, including mine. Me, a 31-year-old woman at the peak of my career, but with an empty heart after several failed relationships. David's kindness and detailed attention were like a stream of fresh water for my arid soul. We started with coffees to talk about work, quick lunches at the office, and then moved on to romantic dates. David always played the role of the perfect man. He knew how to listen, share, and above all, he always respected my career. He used to say, "Ashley, fly high and far. I will always be the safe harbor you can return to." That lie was so sweet that I drank it down without hesitation. 2 months ago, I realized I was late. I held the pregnancy test with two clearly marked red lines. A whirlwind of emotions invaded me. Joy and worry. Joy because, at my age, having a child was a gift from heaven. Worry because the big project with Mr. Garrison's real estate firm was in its final phase, and the position of general director of the department was vacant, waiting for the right person. That night, I told David. His reaction at that moment moved me to tears. He froze, then hugged me tightly, lifted me up, and spun me around, laughing while tears ran down his cheeks. He knelt down, kissed my belly, and whispered, "Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for giving me a family." Immediately, he proposed to me with a diamond ring that, according to him, he had bought by saving half a year's salary. The wedding was planned in a hurry, and it was from then on that the subtle pressures began to appear. "Honey, work is for life, but the baby is the most important thing. The first 3 months are very delicate, and I worry about you running from one place to another, with business lunches and alcohol. Why don't you ask for leave to take care of yourself? Let me take care of earning money. I do not want my wife and son to suffer. That general director position is very stressful. If you accept it, when will you have time for the family? I am afraid you will burn out." At that moment, I only thought that David loved me, that he worried about the health of both of us. I hesitated. I seriously considered taking a step back, yielding the opportunity to someone else to build our little nest. In fact, that very afternoon, before receiving Tyler's call, I had drafted a leave request to send to Sylvia, the general manager and my mentor. Thinking about it, I let out a bitter laugh that resonated in the silence of the car. It turns out that all those sweet words, those tears of happiness, were nothing more than a masterful performance. David did not want this child. For him, my son was just a tool, a chain to bind my wings, a hostage to blackmail my emotions and my career. He knew perfectly well that if I did not withdraw voluntarily, with my ability and the support of the main shareholders, he and his mistress, that Courtney woman, would never have the chance to sit in that seat of power. Courtney, a name that sounds so fragile. I remembered that new employee who had been in marketing for half a year, petite, with an oval face and eyes that always looked on the verge of crying. Courtney messed up everything she did. Her reports were full of errors, and she stuttered when talking to clients. Every time a superior scolded her, she resorted to crying, lamenting her difficult family situation, her elderly mother and her little brothers, to awaken pity. Once I warned David about Courtney's incompetence, but he simply dismissed it, saying I was too hard, that the girl was young and needed time to learn. It turns out her time to learn was spent in my fiancé's bed. The light of his life, his ideal love. The type of woman David liked was the typical dead fly, acting weak so men could play at being her protectors, but behind their backs, she is full of ambition, ready to snatch what does not belong to her. The car entered the building's garage. I turned off the engine and sat in the dark for a few more minutes. I placed a hand on my belly. There, a small being was forming. He was innocent, but his father was too cruel. A ruthless question appeared in my mind. Should I keep this baby? If I had it, it would always be the bond linking me to that wretch. He would use the child to disrupt my life, claiming his rights as a father, demanding part of my assets, fighting for custody. I would have to deal with the scheming and fake Owens family forever. Besides, bringing a child into the world without being able to give him a complete family, letting him grow up with a father who sees him as a tool, would that not be an even greater crime? But if I aborted, it was my own flesh and blood. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot rolling down my cheeks. It was the first time I had cried since leaving the club. I wept for that small life that was not yet born and was already a pawn in his father's hands. I wept for my blind love, and I wept for the painful decision I was about to make. I wiped my tears and composed my expression in the rearview mirror. I could not be weak. This was no time for sentimentality. I needed proof. I needed to confirm the condom conspiracy David had bragged about. I opened the car door and stepped out. The sound of the door closing was firm, as if closing an old chapter of my life. The elevator took me to the 25th floor. The penthouse was spacious and silent. I went directly to the bedroom and turned on all the lights. Everything was tidy, just as I had left it. The blown-up photo of our pre-wedding shoot, hanging over the bed, seemed to mock me. Without even looking at it, I headed to the nightstand on David's side. David was very meticulous. He always kept his personal items in the top drawer. I opened the drawer. A box of Durex condoms, the extra thin kind, was in a corner, next to some vitamins he used to take. The box was started. There were only 3 left. I took the box, my hands trembling slightly. I took it to the bathroom and filled the sink with water. Under the white and blinding light, the silence was so absolute I could hear my heart beating in my chest. I opened the wrapper of the first condom. It looked completely normal, smooth, with no suspicious signs at first glance. I turned on the tap and let the water run into it. It swelled like a small water balloon. I held my breath, watching. 1 second, 2 seconds, tick-tock. Tiny drops of water began to filter through the tip, not in a single place, but in 3 or 4, tiny and precise holes, clearly made with a sharp object like a needle. I tried with the second one and then with the third. The result was identical. All were subtly perforated. Without a meticulous inspection with water, it would be impossible to detect with the naked eye. A shiver ran down my spine. This was not an accident. It was a calculated plot, meticulous down to the last detail. David had planned this for a long time, executing it patiently every day, just waiting for me, his prey, to fall into the trap. He did not just want to destroy my career, he also wanted to manipulate my body, my autonomy. He despised my reproductive health. He despised the child's future, all to achieve his despicable goal of getting promoted. I looked at the broken condoms in the sink, the water dripping. Images of David, carefully giving me vitamins, helping me walk, caressing my belly, appeared like scenes from a horror movie. Behind that intellectual smile hid a snake's heart. I gathered all the evidence, threw it in the trash, and washed my hands with soap, scrubbing so hard my skin turned red. I wanted to clean away any trace, any filth related to that man. Back in the bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and picked up my phone. It was 12 midnight. I sent a message to Sylvia, the general manager. "Sylvia, I need to see you urgently tomorrow. It is not about work. It is something personal. I need your help." Sylvia replied instantly. It seemed she wasn't sleeping either. "Sure, Ashley, at 8 in our usual coffee shop. Is it serious?" "Very serious. It affects my survival," I replied briefly. Then I opened my contacts and looked for the number of a prestigious private gynecological clinic. I stared at the numbers for a long while. Reason told me to call, but my mother's heart twisted. But then, the image of David's smug face at the club returned to my mind. Ashley will become as tame as a puppy. No, I am not a puppy. I am a wolf, and a wolf never lets others decide her destiny. I booked an appointment with a specialist for the following afternoon. The reason, counseling for pregnancy termination. Once everything was done, I lay down, but I couldn't sleep. I opened my personal safe and took out my savings books and the house deeds. I bought this penthouse before I met him. It is only in my name. The car is also mine, and the money in my account is the sweat of 10 years of work. David hasn't contributed a single cent, aside from some tacky gifts bought with his bonuses, which were probably also embezzled money from the company. Luckily, we weren't legally married yet. He wanted to wait until the pregnancy was more advanced or until he was promoted to celebrate a wedding in style. His calculated indecision had become, unintentionally, my escape route. The only link now was the baby and the fictitious title of fiancé. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the door open. David was back. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep deeply. His faltering steps entered the room. A strong smell of alcohol permeated the air. He stood by the bed, watching me for a while. I could feel his gaze. It was no longer that of a lover, but that of a hunter observing his prey trapped in the net. He leaned over and gave me a light kiss on the forehead, whispering with his fake, thick voice, "Sleep well, my silly wife. Thank you for clearing the path for me." Then he went to the bathroom. The sound of running water drowned out the grinding of my teeth in the darkness. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. I applied my makeup carefully, hiding the dark circles, and chose a burgundy red suit, a color David didn't like because he said it was too aggressive. David was still sleeping like a log with his mouth open, a posture I used to find adorable. I looked at him one last time, with no trace of affection. "Get up, honey. It is time to go to work." I shook his shoulder gently with a sweet but icy voice. "Today I am going to submit my leave request just as you wanted. Are you happy?" David sat up, still half asleep, but his eyes lit up upon hearing my words. "Really, my love? It is the right decision. Rest at home and get strong. I will handle everything at the office." "Yes, let you handle it," I smiled, a smile as sharp as a razor. "And you better do it well, because from now on you will have to fight hard to keep your position." David looked at me confused, not understanding my hint. He thought I was joking, so he laughed and hugged me to kiss me. I dodged him delicately and grabbed my purse. "I am going to see Sylvia. Goodbye." I walked out the door, back straight and head held high. The real war had just begun, and this Ashley Miller, once she enters battle, only knows victory. Never a tie, and much less defeat. The coffee shop, hidden in a small alley shaded by century-old trees, was our usual refuge to escape the bustle of the office. Sylvia was already there. A cup of steaming latte was on the table. She is 5 years older than me. The serene beauty of a successful woman emanated from her calm and her intelligent gaze. I sat in front of her, and without beating around the bush, put the leave request on the table. "Have you really decided to quit?" Sylvia frowned, scanning the document. "The project with Mr. Garrison is at its most critical point. Without you, I am afraid David won't be able to handle it all." "I do not just want the leave, Sylvia." I looked her directly in the eyes with a firm voice. "I want you to approve this request immediately and announce it in this morning's meeting." "Ashley, are you hiding something from me?" Sylvia put the paper aside, scrutinizing me. "Knowing you, you would never leave a job halfway just because of morning sickness. Does it have to do with David?" I remained silent for a moment. Then I took out my phone, opened the photo of the perforated condoms, and showed it to her. I told her the whole story of the club, from David's humiliating words to the despicable plan he had devised to push me aside and place his mistress in my spot. When I finished listening, Sylvia's face turned red with anger. She squeezed the coffee cup so hard her knuckles turned white. "What a bastard!" she hissed through her teeth. "I cannot believe he is so low. What does he think women are? An incubator? A tool for his promotion?" "That is exactly why I need your help," I said, with surprising calm. "I want you to approve my leave. I want David and Courtney to think their plan has worked perfectly. I want them to gloat, to lower their guard, and make fatal mistakes." "What do you plan to do?" Sylvia asked, her worry giving way to curiosity. "Take one step back to take 3 forward." I sketched a half smile. "I retire to the background, but I do not let go of the reins. I will continue working, but from the shadows. I need you to ensure that the contract with Mr. Garrison is not signed if the representative isn't me. David will try by all means to get Courtney to take charge of my clients, and that will be the moment we let her dig her own grave." Sylvia reflected for a moment and then nodded with determination. "Agreed. I will collaborate with you. I have been fed up with David's arrogance and incompetence for a long time, but out of respect for you and the Owens family, I turned a blind eye. This time, he is finished. There is one more thing." I hesitated for an instant. This afternoon, I am going to the clinic to terminate the pregnancy. The atmosphere became dense. Sylvia looked at me with compassion and took my cold hand. Have you thought it through, Ashley? The baby isn't to blame. I know. I swallowed hard, a bitter lump in my throat. But I cannot bring a child into the world to become a weapon of revenge or the chain that binds me to a wretch. I want to cut all ties with David, suffer once, and end it forever. Sylvia squeezed my hand. Her firm look transmitted strength to me. I respect your decision. Whatever you do, I am on your side. You take care of yourself and recover your strength. I will handle things at the office. I will play my role perfectly. Thank you, Sylvia. I smiled, feeling a little lighter. So it is settled. This morning, in the meeting, I will pretend to regret it. But I will say that for your health, I am forced to accept, and I will make sure to emphasize that your entire VIP client portfolio is to be managed by David and Courtney. Don't worry, I will play along perfectly. Sylvia winked at me, regaining her usual sharpness. Get ready to see a good show. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt as if a heavy slab had been lifted off me. I had an ally, the most powerful and influential one in the company. Now it was time to return to the wolf's den to begin my performance. I entered the meeting room at 9 o'clock sharp. The murmur of conversation silenced abruptly with my arrival. David was presiding over the table since Sylvia had not arrived yet. His eyes shone with smugness, but his mouth continued to feign concern. Ashley, if you are tired, stay home. Don't strain yourself coming to the office. I didn't answer him. I went directly to my usual seat to the right of the chairperson. Courtney, sitting in a corner of the table, looked at me sideways before shooting a complicit look at David. The door opened and Sylvia entered with her usual air of authority. Everyone stood up. Sylvia signaled for us to sit down and went straight to the point. Today, I have an important announcement to make, Sylvia said, holding my leave request with a somber air. Director Ashley Miller, for personal health reasons, needs a long-term leave to take care of her pregnancy. Although it is a great loss for the company in this crucial phase, management has decided to prioritize the health of our employees. Therefore, I have approved her request, effective starting tomorrow. A murmur spread through the room. Everyone turned to look at me with a mix of surprise and pity. I lowered my head, playing the role of a weak woman resigning herself to her fate. Thank you, Sylvia, and thanks to the management for your understanding, I said with a slightly trembling voice. I regret not being able to continue fighting with you on this project. I hope you continue striving to achieve our goals. David jumped up, unable to hide his smile. Relax, everyone. Even though Ashley is leaving, I am still here. I will take charge of the commercial department in her name. My wife has already worked a lot. Now it is her turn to rest. He deliberately emphasized the words, my wife, to affirm his possession and project the image of a model husband. I felt like vomiting, but I kept a forced smile. As for the staff, Sylvia continued, her gaze sweeping over Courtney, who was shrunk in her corner. Ashley's workload is enormous. David won't be able to handle it all alone. Therefore, I propose transferring Ashley's VIP client portfolio to Miss Courtney King under David's supervision. Miss King is a young and dynamic employee, and this is an opportunity for her to prove her worth. Courtney, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing, lit up. She stood up and bowed several times. Thank you, General Manager, for your trust. I promise to try my hardest not to disappoint you or Mr. Owens. All right. Sylvia waved her hand. Ashley, hand over the files to Courtney right after this meeting. When the meeting ended, everyone left. David stayed behind and patted me on the shoulder, whispering, See? You rest at home and take care of yourself. I will tell Courtney to stop by your office to pick up the documentation right now. I followed David's back with my eyes until he disappeared. The smile vanished from my face. He was in such a hurry to snatch my achievements that he couldn't wait even a second longer. 5 minutes later, Courtney knocked on my office door. She entered with a fake shyness, but her greedy eyes were nailed to the filing cabinet behind me. "Mrs. Miller, I am here for the file transfer," she said quietly. "Sit down." I pointed to the chair opposite, without looking up as I continued packing my personal things into a cardboard box. "The entire client list and ongoing contracts are on this flash drive. I will email you the password." Courtney accepted the flash drive as if it were gold, caressing it. "Mrs. Miller, I know you are sad about having to leave work, but don't worry. I will take good care of your clients. David says I have talent, that I just need an opportunity to shine." I stopped what I was doing and looked her directly in the eyes. "Courtney, being a sales rep isn't just about drinking wine at business lunches and flirting with men. My clients are sharks. Do you think you have what it takes to play with them?" Courtney felt intimidated by my gaze, but quickly recovered her arrogance. "Don't worry so much. With David's guidance, I am sure I will do fine. Nowadays, talent is one thing, but the important thing is knowing how to use your contacts. You are very good, yes, but men get scared of women who are too strong. I am different. I know how to please them." Her words were an open declaration of war. She no longer hid her ambition. She believed I was finished, that I was the loser, and that she no longer had to show me respect. "Well, congratulations." I closed the cardboard box and stood up. "I hope you please them as much as you please my fiancé. But remember well what I tell you. Sitting in this chair is easy. The hard part is staying in it. Be careful that when you fall, there is no one there to catch you." Courtney made a face. She stood up and headed for the door with the flash drive. "Thanks for the advice. Go home and cook dinner. Your time has passed." I watched her figure swaying away and smiled to myself. She had the flash drive, but she didn't know that the truly important clients, the key contacts, weren't there. The list she had received was an empty shell or contained only the most difficult and problematic clients, which I had deliberately left her as a welcome gift. I left my office with the box in my arms. The employees looked at me with pity. I smiled at them and said goodbye. It wasn't an end, but the beginning of a purge. I would return, and the day of my return would be Judgment Day for that pair of adulterers. Before leaving, I stopped by the office kitchen to pick up a personal thermos I had forgotten. As I approached, I heard giggles inside. It was Courtney's voice and that of some admin employees known for their gossip. Girl, that Ashley, as fierce as she is, and in the end, David sent her home to raise kids. "Well, of course," Courtney's voice sounded shrill and petulant. "If chicks spend all day working and neglect their appearance, it is normal for their husbands to get tired. Men fall in love with their eyes." She thought that by earning a lot of money, she was going to keep him. Ha! David only saw her as an ATM. And what about the pregnancy? I heard David pampered her a lot. Pamper her? Courtney laughed with disdain. It was all a strategy. David told me he had to do it so she would hand over the power docilely. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to pull the chair out from under her ass. Now she will stay at home with her deformed and ugly belly, and David will have the perfect excuse to be with me. Blood rushed to my head. I grabbed the doorknob, ready to go in and teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. But reason stopped me. No, it wasn't the time yet. If I caused a scene, they would label me a hysterical, jealous woman, and she would go back to playing the helpless victim. I took a deep breath, let go of the knob, and made a loud noise with my steps. The laughter ceased abruptly. I pushed the door and entered, my face impassive, as if I hadn't heard anything. Courtney and the others stared at me, pale as paper. Courtney was holding a glass of water, and her hand shook so much she spilled a little. With total naturalness, I went to the shelf, picked up my thermos, and turned to look Courtney in the face. She avoided my gaze, pretending to clean the water off the table. "Courtney," I called her, my voice soft but full of authority. "Yes, Mrs. Miller," she stammered, forgetting her cocky tone from earlier. "You are right." I smiled and walked up to her. "Men fall in love with their eyes. But you forget one thing. Beauty withers. Only intelligence and character endure. You have used your beauty to seduce David, to steal what doesn't belong to you. But are you sure you will be able to keep him forever? Or when you get old and ugly, will he look for someone younger and fresher to replace you, just like he is doing with me?" Courtney's face went from red to white. She bit her lip, unable to say anything. "And another thing." I leaned in and whispered in her ear, low enough so only she could hear me. "Did you think you had won? The game has just begun, sweetie. Enjoy your fleeting days of glory because the price you are going to pay will be very, very high." With that said, I straightened up and walked out of the kitchen, leaving a sepulchral silence behind me. I was sure the other employees would spread the story throughout the company. I wanted to plant a seed of fear in Courtney's heart, an unease that would eat away at her day by day. Those who do evil never find peace. I went down to the building lobby and took a cab to the clinic. It was starting to drizzle. The raindrops hit the glass, fogging everything up. At the private gynecological clinic, lying on a cold gurney, the doctor looked at me with concern over her thick glasses. "Are you sure about your decision? The fetus is developing normally." "I am sure," I replied. My voice echoed lonely in the empty room. I closed my eyes as the anesthesia began to take effect. A hot tear rolled from the corner of my eye to the pillow. "Forgive me, my child. Forgive me 1,000 times. In another life, please. Be born into a happy family. Don't be my son anymore." In my induced sleep, I saw myself in the middle of a desolate field. In the distance, David and Courtney were laughing and waving at me. But suddenly, the earth opened beneath their feet and swallowed them into a dark abyss. I watched them fall, feeling absolutely nothing. When I woke up, it was already night. A dull ache in my lower abdomen reminded me that it was all over. The baby was gone. The last link binding me to David had been cut. I left the clinic. The rain had stopped and the air was fresh and clean. I took a deep breath, feeling my chest expand. The physical pain would heal. The emotional pain would become a scar. I took out my phone and called Mr. Garrison, the CEO of Associated Real Estate. "Mr. Garrison, this is Ashley Miller. Sorry to call you at this hour. I have something important to discuss with you regarding the contract." "Yes, not as a company representative, but personally. Could we have tea tomorrow?" On the other end of the line, Mr. Garrison's voice sounded energetic. "Of course. I was just thinking of calling you. I heard you left the company. What kind of management is that? Changing leaders in the middle of a battle? I only trust you, just so you know." "It is a long story, Mr. Garrison. Tomorrow, when we meet, I will explain everything. I assure you, you won't lose out." I hung up. I looked at the starry night sky. The light of a street lamp projected my shadow, long and lonely on the sidewalk. Lonely but proud. Tomorrow, a completely new Ashley Miller would be reborn. No longer the naive girl who believed in eternal love, but a steel warrior ready to crush anyone who dared trample on her dignity. David, Courtney, just wait. I returned to the penthouse when the clock struck 10 at night. My body was exhausted after the procedure, but my mind was strangely lucid. The house was dark and cold as a tomb. David hadn't returned yet. Surely he would be busy celebrating his victory with his moonlight or comforting her after the scare I gave her at the office. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the sofa in the living room and poured myself a glass of warm water. The streetlight filtered through the large window, drawing luminous spots on the parquet. I stayed there, motionless as a statue, listening to the tick-tock of the clock. Every second was a reminder of the pain and hatred accumulating inside me. The phone vibrated on the table, breaking the deadly silence. The screen lit up, showing David, the name I once saved with so much affection. I stared at it. An ironic smile appeared on my lips. Now, those letters seemed ridiculous and grotesque. I let it ring 3 times before answering slowly, modulating my voice to sound sleepy and tired. "Hello, tell me, honey." "Ashley, where are you? Why aren't you sleeping yet?" David's voice on the other end wasn't one of concern, but a hostile interrogation. Loud music and laughter in the background indicated he was partying somewhere. "I just fell asleep waiting for you," I said without blinking, toying with the glass. "My stomach has been hurting all afternoon. I think I had a threatened miscarriage. Were you calling for something?" David fell silent for a moment. Perhaps the mention of the pregnancy made him feel a little guilt, but immediately his voice became more aggressive. "And you still ask? What the hell did you do at the office this afternoon? Why did you go to the kitchen to harass Courtney? Do you know she has been crying with swollen eyes and threatening to quit? You are her superior, an executive, and you start intimidating a new employee? Does that seem normal to you?" His accusation was like a bucket of cold water, erasing the last shred of hope I had left about his conscience. His wife was at home in pain, worried about losing the baby, and the first thing he did wasn't ask about her health, but reprimand her for hurting his mistress. I took a deep breath, containing the rage, and kept my voice as calm as possible. "David, I don't know what you were talking about. I just went to get my thermos, and while I was at it, I reminded Courtney of a couple of things about her professional attitude. I have handed over my entire client portfolio to her. I have the right to demand seriousness from her. Or do you prefer I let her ruin the reputation I have worked so hard to build?" "Don't make excuses," David shouted. "Courtney says you made fun of her, that you insulted her and threatened her. Stop your stupid jealousy. There is nothing between Courtney and me. I see her like a little sister I want to help in her career. What you have done is humiliate me, do you understand?" "A little sister?" I laughed, a bitter sound in the silent night. "David, does a brother prick condoms to get his wife pregnant and thus clear the path for his little sister? Does a brother go out for drinks with his little sister until midnight while leaving his pregnant wife in pain at home?" On the other end, total silence. Even the music seemed to have lowered in volume. I had left him speechless. He didn't expect me to know about the condoms, or maybe he thought I was just being sarcastic, but his silence was the clearest confession. "What nonsense are you saying?" His voice lowered in tone with a nuance of panic. "Who put those ideas in your head? Don't believe people's gossip. Everything I do is for our future, for our son." "Cut the crap," I cut him off, feeling deep disgust. "I don't need your explanations. Go comfort your little sister. I am tired and need to rest. Oh, and remind Courtney that tears don't improve sales figures. If she cannot handle the pressure, let her go back home to play princess. The business world isn't for the weak." "Ashley, how dare you—" I hung up abruptly without letting him finish. I threw the phone aside and leaned back on the sofa, closing my eyes. The first round was over. David was starting to show his true nature, impulsive and uncontrolled, when it came to Courtney's interests. The more he protected her, the more evident their relationship would be, and more importantly, that blind favoritism would be his Achilles' heel at work. I got up and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat something to regain strength. The doctor had recommended I take good care of myself after the procedure. I opened the fridge and took out a jar of lobster bisque, a gift from a partner. David had wanted to take it to his mother, but I kept it. Now I would use it to take care of myself. While I ate, I planned my next move. The meeting with Mr. Garrison the next day would be key. He was a man of principles who hated falsehood. With a little cunning, he would become my best asset to turn the game around. The next morning, David arrived at 6. He tiptoed into the bedroom, reeking of alcohol and cheap women's perfume. I stayed in bed, my back to the door, pretending to sleep. He stood watching me for a moment, sighed, and got into the shower. I opened my eyes, staring into the void. There was no longer pain or remorse, only cold determination. Today, officially, I would set my trap. I chose an emerald green silk dress and subtle but elegant makeup, which hid my paleness and gave me a sophisticated air. The meeting place was a quiet and classic tea room in a secluded alley, Mr. Garrison's favorite place to talk business. He was already there, sitting before a fine porcelain tea set. He was a man in his late 50s, with gray hair, but with an incredibly lively gaze that reflected the authority of a business veteran. "Good morning, Mr. Garrison," I greeted with a respectful nod. "Ashley, sit down, child." He put down the cup and looked at me attentively. "You look thinner. How is the pregnancy? Why did you leave work so suddenly? I was stunned when I found out." I sat across from him with an expression of controlled sadness. "Thank you for your concern. It is a long story. Today, I dared to invite you. First, to apologize for not being able to continue with the project until the end. And second, to talk to you about something personal, as if you were family." Mr. Garrison poured me a cup of aromatic tea. He stared at me, as if trying to read my thoughts. "Speak, child. I consider you family. If something worries you, tell me, and I will defend you." I took a sip to calm myself and began to tell him the story. I didn't do it with wailing as Courtney would, but with the tone of a partner concerned about her collaborator's interests. I told him how David had pressured me to leave the job and put his mistress in my place, about Courtney's incompetence and lack of professionalism, and about my concern for the project in which we had both invested so much. Of course, I omitted the abortion and the condoms. Those were details too intimate that might make a traditional man like him uncomfortable. I focused on the professional and ethical aspects. When I finished, Mr. Garrison's face hardened. He put the cup on the table with a dry thud. "What nerve!" He shook his head, indignant. "That kid David seems like a good guy, but he has a rotten heart. He treats the company as if it were his own farm. And he puts a brat with no experience to negotiate with me? He is disrespecting me." I tried to reason with him, but he won't listen, I said with a sigh and watery eyes. "He says Courtney, being young and knowing how to treat clients, will do better than me, that with the pregnancy I am slow and clumsy. I only worry that your great project will go to waste." "Knowing how to treat clients?" Mr. Garrison let out a contemptuous laugh. "I need partners with brains and vision, not dolls who serve drinks. This project is worth millions. One mistake can be fatal." Seeing it was the opportune moment, I slid a small envelope toward him. Inside wasn't money, but a detailed draft of the Phase 2 business plan, which I had prepared pulling an all-nighter before my leave. "Mr. Garrison, this is all my effort poured into this project. Even though I am no longer in charge, I wanted to leave it for you to consult. I don't want my personal problems to affect your interests. I only ask that you consider it carefully before signing with the new manager." Mr. Garrison opened the envelope and scanned the pages full of data and analysis. He nodded continuously with a mix of satisfaction and regret. "Excellent. Detailed, exhaustive, and very realistic. It shows that only you understand this project thoroughly. Without you, that bunch of inept people will turn it into a disaster." He closed the dossier and looked me in the eyes with a firm voice. "Ashley, I will be honest with you. I have been in this for many years, and my word is sacred. I signed with Valoria Group because of your ability, not for the company's reputation nor to do David a favor. Now that you aren't there, I am no longer interested." "I understand," I nodded. "But if you cancel the contract now, Valoria could sue you for breach of pre-agreement, and it would be a mess. I have a request. I don't know if you could help me." "Tell me." "I want you to continue working with David and Courtney," I said slowly, "but I ask you to be more demanding, to raise the bar to the level I always maintained. Let them see that sitting in that chair isn't a game. Let their true incompetence come to light under pressure." Mr. Garrison looked at me, a clever smile appearing on his lips. He was an old fox. He understood my plan instantly. I didn't want him to withdraw. I wanted him to be my touchstone, my sharp blade to unmask those frauds. "Very well, girl," he laughed out loud, slapping his thigh. "You want to use me as your weapon? All right, I will help you. I am also curious to see how that brat and this David guy manage with my reasonable demands. Let's see how long the act lasts." "Thank you very much," I smiled, pouring him more tea. "And don't worry." When all this is over, I promise to compensate you with an even more valuable contract. I trust you." He raised his cup. "Let's toast that the curtain falls on this farce soon. I await the day of your return." We clinked our cups. The clinking sounded in the silence like a bell, announcing the end of the traitors. I knew that, from that moment on, David and Courtney had entered, without knowing it, a dead end. The news that Courtney was officially assuming the real estate project in the south of the city spread like wildfire through the company. She walked with airs of grandeur, giving orders to my former subordinates with an arrogant tone. David was always by her side, acting as her protector, ready to reprimand anyone who dared question his little mistress. I was at home, but my eyes and ears at the office were working at full capacity. Reports came to me constantly. "Ashley, Courtney came to the meeting this morning without preparing anything. She wouldn't stop stuttering and left everyone frustrated. David just approved an extraordinary salary increase for Courtney. The excuse is assuming greater responsibilities. Everyone is gossiping." I read the messages with a smile. Let them enjoy their fleeting power. The higher they fly, the harder the fall will be. The climax of the farce arrived on Friday night at the presentation dinner with the key partner. David and Courtney reserved a private room at the most luxurious restaurant in the city to entertain Mr. Garrison and close the contract. I wasn't there, but thanks to Mr. Garrison's vivid account and the recordings his assistant sent me secretly, I was able to reconstruct the disaster as if I were watching a movie. The evening began without problems. David, impeccable in his suit. Courtney, in a dress with a plunging neckline and heavy makeup. But the problems started with the appetizers. Mr. Garrison, following custom, raised his glass of red wine. "Let's toast to this new collaboration. I hope Miss King is up to Ashley's standards and brings fresh air to the project." David raised his glass, smiling, but Courtney stayed still, playing with her water glass. "I am sorry, Mr. Garrison," she said with a finicky voice. "I cannot drink wine. It is very strong and bitter. I will drink water." The atmosphere froze. Mr. Garrison was left with his glass in the air. His smile disappeared. In business, refusing the first drink from an important partner is an offense, a lack of respect. David, seeing the situation, intervened quickly. "Excuse her, Mr. Garrison. Courtney doesn't tolerate alcohol well, and besides, she has a skin allergy. I will drink for her." He drank his glass and prepared to drink Courtney's, but Mr. Garrison slammed his glass on the table. "Mr. Owens," his voice was icy, "I am treating my partner, the person responsible for my millions, not your companion. If Miss King is so fragile that she cannot have a drink out of courtesy, how is she going to withstand the pressure of this work? Or is it that when we go to the construction site, she will also be afraid of ruining her skin and will stay in the car with the air conditioning barking orders?" Courtney blushed and then turned pale. Instead of apologizing, she resorted to her usual spoiled child tantrum, grabbing David's arm with teary eyes. "David, he is scolding me. I told you I didn't drink." That stupid gesture was the last straw. Mr. Garrison detested weak and dependent women. "All right," he said, fed up. "Let's leave the wine. Let's move on to what is important. Where is the business plan? Miss King, present to me how you plan to develop the second phase." Courtney, nervous, took a dossier out of her purse, but she dropped her lipstick on the floor. She started reading the document like a parrot, but it was an old plan she had copied in a hurry, with outdated data that didn't correspond to reality. 5 minutes later, Mr. Garrison couldn't take it anymore. He slammed the table and jumped up. "Enough! Are you laughing at me? The data is wrong. The plan is a rehash. Is this how Ashley's substitute works? Has the Valoria Group run out of competent people?" David, pale as a corpse, tried to calm him down. "Mr. Garrison, please listen to me. Courtney is new and is still learning." "Then let her learn at home," he shouted, pointing at him. "If you defend her, you show that you aren't worth anything either. Let me be clear. I am going to reconsider this contract. I am not going to put my money in the hands of a bunch of useless people." With that said, he walked out, ignoring David's pleas and leaving Courtney crying her eyes out. The luxury dinner had turned into a total humiliation. The next morning, Mr. Garrison called me. His voice still sounded annoyed, but with a touch of satisfaction. "You were right, Ashley. One cannot work with those people. Yesterday, I taught them a lesson they won't forget. I have announced that I am suspending the signing of the contract and demanding an explanation from the Valoria Group. Your company must be in a state of panic right now." "Thank you for playing your role so well," I laughed, feeling exultant. Now it is my turn to enter the scene, maintain that inflexible attitude, only agree to meet when someone with the authority and capacity to resolve this shows up. Agreed. I await your good news. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was smiling, radiant and confident. The moment had arrived. David and Courtney had dug their own grave. Now it was my turn to return, clean up the mess, and reclaim what was mine. I sent a message to Sylvia. "The fish has bitten. Get ready to ask for my help." The game was getting interesting. As expected, on Monday the Valoria Group headquarters was chaos. Tension was palpable in the air. Employees walked on tiptoes, whispering. Everyone knew the multi-million-dollar project with Mr. Garrison was about to sink. I, meanwhile, enjoyed a quiet breakfast at home with a cup of chamomile tea. Starting at 8, my phone didn't stop ringing. First the administration department, then David. Even an unknown number that I guessed was Courtney's. I put the phone on silent, ignoring all calls. I wanted them to taste the helplessness and panic to the fullest. At 10, the doorbell rang. Through the intercom, I saw Sylvia with a fake expression of worry. I smiled and opened the door. "Good morning, General Manager." I winked at her. "You arrived earlier than I thought." "Stop acting. We aren't at the office," Sylvia said, entering and letting out a sigh of relief with a mischievous smile. "You cannot imagine the mess that is going on. David is pale as wax, trying to contact Mr. Garrison without success, and Courtney has been locked in the bathroom, crying since first thing in the morning. And what does the board of directors say? What are they going to say? The main shareholders demand an emergency meeting to assign responsibility. They want to save the contract at all costs. If not, David will be dismissed immediately. It is your moment to act." I nodded and went to my study for a dossier I already had prepared. "I have a meeting with Mr. Garrison this noon. Go back to the office and announce that you have managed to convince me to return to help, but insist that I will only do it as a special advisor. After all, I am still on maternity leave." "Understood. You are a brilliant strategist." That noon, I met with Mr. Garrison in his private office, this time in the lion's den. He received me as if I were his savior. "Ashley, you arrived just in time. The people from Valoria won't stop calling me, but I have given orders not to put any calls through. I only negotiate with competent people. Thank you for keeping your promise." I put the new contract on his table. "This is the revised draft with some clauses more favorable to you as compensation for the incident." Mr. Garrison scanned it, nodding with approval. "Very professional. You know how to balance the interests of both parties." "Agreed. I will sign it, but with one condition." "Which one?" "This contract will only be valid if the person leading the project is Ashley Miller. If the Valoria Group changes managers, the contract will be automatically annulled, and they must pay an indemnity of 200%. I was stunned for a second, and then I smiled, grateful. Not only did he help me close the deal, but he gave me the sword to execute David. With that clause, he would never again dare try to push me aside. Thank you, Mr. Garrison. I won't disappoint you. 20 minutes later, I left the building with a signed and sealed contract worth $2 million. The sun over the city was shining, but I felt an immense inner freshness. I took a photo of the contract and sent it to the board of directors WhatsApp group with a simple message: "Problem solved. See you at the meeting this afternoon." The chat exploded. Applause and hearts rained down. But I knew 2 people were trembling upon seeing that message. At 3 in the afternoon, I entered the main boardroom of the Valoria Group. I wasn't wearing loose maternity clothes, but an elegant fitted black dress with a white blazer. I wore low heels, but my presence radiated power. The room went silent. David, sitting at the head, had a haggard face and sunken eyes. Courtney was by his side, head down, not daring to look at anyone. I walked directly to my seat and dropped the contract dossier on the table. The thud sounded dry, like a judge's gavel handing down a sentence. "The $2 million contract with Garrison Real Estate has been signed," I announced, my gaze sweeping the stunned faces. "Mr. Garrison has agreed to overlook our little slip-up, but on the condition that I direct the project personally." Applause erupted. The shareholders and department heads looked at me with admiration. Sylvia smiled, satisfied. David forced a smile and applauded with the others, but his face was a mask of pain. "Thank you, Ashley, for your effort. I said it, only you could solve this." "One moment." I raised my hand, my voice icy. "The work is done. Now let's talk about responsibilities. Who caused this disaster? Who was about to throw $2 million overboard due to their incompetence and lack of professionalism?" All eyes nailed Courtney. She was trembling, pale. She stammered, trying to make excuses. "Stand up," I shouted, startling everyone. "Are you a sales rep or a guest at a party? You go to a key meeting unprepared with wrong data, and on top of that, you behave like a spoiled child refusing to toast. Do you think the business world is a daycare?" "I am sorry, Mrs. Miller. I am sorry," she broke down crying. "It is just that day I was tired and I don't have experience." "If you don't have experience, don't be so greedy as to sit in a chair that is too big for you," I replied harshly. "Do you know how many people here have sweated blood to get this contract? Your stupidity doesn't just sink you, it sinks us all." David, seeing his mistress humiliated, stood up to defend her. "Enough, Ashley. She has admitted her mistake. Don't be so hard. In the end, the contract has been signed." "You sit down." I turned toward him, glaring daggers. "You are not innocent either. As director of operations, you have tolerated and covered up the incompetence of an employee for personal reasons. You have mixed professional with private, with dire consequences. If it hadn't been for me today, do you think you would still be sitting in that chair?" David was left speechless, red with shame and anger, but he didn't dare reply in front of the shareholders. He knew I had the upper hand. "I propose," I addressed Sylvia and the board, "the immediate dismissal of Miss King as project manager, her demotion to trainee employee so she learns from scratch, and a review of Mr. Owen's leadership capacity in this matter." "I agree," said Sylvia, the first to raise her hand. "I also second," said another major shareholder. One by one, everyone raised their hand. The decision was unanimous. Courtney ran out of the room, crying. David remained sunk in his chair, looking at me with a mix of fear and hatred. I looked directly at him and sketched a smile of contempt. This was only the first slap. Physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain I had suffered. The meeting ended. I left the room as a victor, but I knew David wouldn't give up so easily. He would try to get revenge or in a lower way beg to come back to me to use me again. And just as I expected, that night he appeared at my house. At 8, the doorbell rang insistently. I looked at the intercom and saw David with a bouquet of roses and a bag of food. His face had recovered its usual composure, but his eyes betrayed his calculation. I opened the door and stood in the threshold with no intention of letting him pass. "What are you doing here?" "Ashley, I came to see you." He offered me the flowers with a pleading smile. "Today you were incredible. I brought you some seafood bisques so you can regain strength. It is very good for pregnant women." "Thanks, I am not hungry. Take it to your little friend. I am sure she needs comfort." "Don't say that." He slipped inside, pushing me aside. "I know you are angry with me. I was wrong. I was too soft with Courtney and it affected work. But you have to believe me. Between her and me, there is only a sibling relationship. The only woman I love and want to marry is you. I moved away from him, looking at him like he was a freak. Siblings. Siblings who sleep together. Siblings who promise to kick me out on the street to put her on a pedestal. David froze. His face changed. He realized I knew everything. He knelt down suddenly, resorting to his last trick, emotional blackmail. Ashley, forgive me. It was a momentary stupidity. Remember our beginning. The day you found me starving at the bus stop, it was Courtney who bought me a sandwich and a bottle of water. She saved my life. I owe her a lot. That is why I wanted to help her. But my love for you is real. I burst out laughing, so hard that David looked up, confused. He didn't understand why his touching story of the Savior sandwich caused me so much amusement. You are an idiot, David. I looked at him with pity. You keep talking about your Savior, about the sandwich that saved you. But have you ever asked yourself why Courtney knew you liked the ham sandwich, or why inside there was a $20 bill folded in the shape of a heart? David frowned. What do you mean? She told me she was passing by Chance. Chance, my foot, I yelled at him, throwing a cushion at him. The one who bought that sandwich was me. The one who put the bill in was me. That day it was pouring rain and I saw you curled up at the stop. I felt sorry for you and went to buy you something to eat. But when I came back, I saw Courtney talking to you. I was too shy to approach and I left. You woke up. You saw her and assumed she was your savior, and she had the nerve to take the credit. David was in shock. He looked at me with wide eyes, mouth open. The truth was too much for him. He had adored an imposter and trampled on the true person who helped him. Is it true? Why didn't you tell me before? For what? So you would pity me? I laughed bitterly. I loved you for your worth, for our connection, not for a debt from the past. But you are blind. You let yourself be fooled by a dead fly. Ashley, I am sorry. I was wrong. Give me a chance to fix it. For our son, please don't leave me. I looked at his bowed head and felt infinite disgust. Even now, he used the child as a shield. I went to the vanity, picked up a paper, and threw it in his face. Our son, open your eyes and read. David, trembling, picked up the paper. It was the discharge report from the clinic. The words voluntary termination of pregnancy in bold hit his sight. You aborted. He looked up, his face breaking down. Why? Why have you been so cruel? It was my son. Why did he deserve to have a father as despicable as you? I hissed, my gaze like knives. You saw him as a tool to tie me down, to steal my career. I prefer to suffer once than for my son to be born into a world of lies and manipulation. You are a damn witch, he screamed, lunging at me. But I was prepared. I grabbed the pepper spray I had at hand and sprayed it in his face. David howled in pain, writhing on the floor. Calmly, I called security. Security, come up to penthouse 25. A stranger has entered and attacked me. 5 minutes later, 2 security guards dragged David away, who wouldn't stop insulting and cursing me. I watched him go. With my heart frozen, the door closed and silence returned. I poured myself a glass of wine and went out to the balcony. Below, the city lights shone. The first battle was over. I had won, but the wound was still open. However, I knew I couldn't crumble. The final act still remained. The shareholders' meeting and the revelation of my true identity. David, Courtney, wait. The day of your fall is near. After that night, David practically disappeared from my life. He didn't dare get close to my house anymore, partly out of fear, partly out of hatred. At the office, he avoided crossing paths with me, but I knew that silence was the calm before the storm. A wounded beast is the most dangerous. David was cornered. He had lost the child, his main leverage to manipulate me. He had lost Mr. Garrison's trust and his credibility before the board of directors. And what was most painful for him, he had discovered that Courtney, the woman he idolized, was nothing more than a fraud. However, instead of repenting, his greedy and selfish nature sank him even deeper into the mud. He didn't accept defeat. He couldn't allow me, the woman he despised, to crush him. He needed a stroke of effect, a spectacular achievement to recover his position before the shareholders' meeting that would be held at the end of the month. And for that, he chose the most insane path: accounting fraud. I found out, thanks to the surveillance camera system I had secretly installed in his office before my leave. It was an ace up my sleeve I never thought I would need, but which had now become my best weapon. On my computer screen, I saw David and Courtney whispering in his locked office. Courtney, after being demoted, had become completely submissive to David. She knew he was her only lifeline. "Are you sure about this?" Courtney asked with a trembling voice. "Falsifying income is a crime. If we get caught, we will go to jail." "Shut up," David snapped at her, eyes bloodshot. "What do you prefer, jail or ending up begging on the street? That bitch Ashley has the upper hand. If I don't get the general director position, my career is finished. And if I go down, don't think you are getting off free." "But the difference in the numbers is huge," said Courtney, worried. "Actual income this quarter has dropped 30%. And you want to massage them to make it look like a 20% increase? The auditors will find out immediately." "Relax, I have already taken care of the auditors." David smiled maliciously. "The head of auditing is a drinking buddy of mine. With a good wad of bills, he will turn a blind eye. Your job is to sign these phantom contracts. Pretend we just closed big deals with your family's companies. Since they have a small business, nothing will happen for using their name, right?" Courtney turned pale. She knew David was using her as a scapegoat. If everything came to light, she would be the one mainly responsible. But faced with David's threatening gaze, she didn't dare refuse. Trembling, she signed the fake contracts worth tens of thousands of dollars. I, in front of the screen, sipped my bitter coffee. That pair of incompetents was digging their own grave. They believed money could buy everything, even an auditor's integrity. But they didn't know that drinking buddy of David's was, in reality, a man I had infiltrated. I called an unknown number. "Mr. Duran, the fish has bitten. Accept his money, but keep all the evidence, recordings, messages. I will need you as a witness at the board." "Don't worry, Mrs. Miller. I know perfectly well what I have to do." I hung up, satisfied with my foresight. Life gives nothing away. I had invested a lot of money and effort into building this information network, and now it was bearing fruit. The following days, I kept silent. I acted as if I knew nothing. I kept going to the office, directing Mr. Garrison's project successfully, but without interfering in David's work. I let him roam freely, let him believe he had fooled us all. David became increasingly arrogant. He paraded through the company bragging about his fictitious achievements and promising extraordinary bonuses. People cheered him, but behind his back they shook their heads. Everyone sensed something didn't add up. I watched him on his pedestal of lies and felt pity. He was like a moth attracted to the fire, thinking it was the light of success, when in reality it was the flame that would consume his life. 3 days before the meeting, the atmosphere at Valoria Group was electric. Rumors of a change in top management circulated. David's camp tried to buy votes while the neutrals waited to see which way the wind blew. I maintained a baffling calm. I went to the office, worked, and in the afternoon went shopping or to the spa. I wanted to be in top form, physically and mentally, for the big day, but my tranquility unsettled David. He had me followed, but the detective only informed him of the boring routine of a single, wealthy woman. That afternoon, I received a call from Sylvia. "Ashley, come up to my office right now. A very important guest wants to see you." I was surprised. Who could it be? I fixed myself up and went up to the top floor. Upon entering the office, I froze. Sitting on the sofa was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a kind but imposing face. "Dad!" I exclaimed, emotional. "Yes, it was Mr. Franklin Miller. The president of the Valoria Group and my father. He stood up and opened his arms to me. I ran to hug him with tears in my eyes. Since I decided to hide my identity to carve out a future on my own, I had limited my meetings with him so as not to raise suspicions. I wanted to prove to him that his daughter could succeed by herself. "My silly girl, you are too thin." He stroked my hair. "I am sorry I let you go through all this alone. I know everything about that wretch David." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to solve it myself, Dad. I didn't want to worry you." "Is my daughter's happiness a minor concern?" He said seriously, although his eyes shone with love. "I was about to intervene, but Sylvia told me you had your own plan. But this time he has crossed the line. He has stained the company's name, and that I cannot tolerate." "Relax, Dad. I have all the evidence. At the meeting, I will teach him a lesson he won't forget. I just need you to promise me one thing." "Tell me. Let me unmask him. I want him to see that the one who defeated him isn't the president's daughter, but Ashley Miller, the woman he trampled on." My father looked at me, nodding with pride. "Agreed. My daughter has grown up strong and brave like your mother. I will be in the front row. Just another spectator enjoying your show." We talked a while longer. He told me that David's stepbrother, Hector Owens, a man of integrity and capability, had been buying company shares in secret and had contacted him to collaborate. "Hector will be a good ally for you. I have prepared his appearance at the right moment of the meeting." Leaving Sylvia's office, I felt full of confidence. I was no longer alone. I had Sylvia, Mr. Garrison, my father, and now Hector. "David, what were you going to face me with?" The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived. The Valoria Group headquarters was decked out. Luxury cars, shareholders, partners, and journalists filled the auditorium. I entered wearing a pristine white suit, a symbol of purity and justice. My presence hogged all the gazes. David was at the head table. Upon seeing me, he smiled smugly. With his falsified financial report, he believed victory was assured. Courtney was sitting in the back, shrunk. She looked haggard and scared. The meeting began. After the obligatory speeches, the key moment arrived. David went up to the podium and presented his report. He spoke of spectacular growth figures and non-existent contracts. The shareholders, dazzled, applauded enthusiastically. "Thank you, Mr. Owens. We will proceed to the vote for the position of General Director, with you as the sole candidate," announced the moderator. "One moment!" A firm voice resonated in the room. The door opened and a handsome, determined man entered, followed by a team of lawyers and auditors. It was Hector Owens. "Excuse the delay," said Hector, going up to the podium. "I am Hector Owens, representative of a new group of shareholders that owns 35% of the company, and I have something to say about that report." "What are you doing here?" stammered David, pale. "I am here to unmask your fraud. That financial report is completely false." The auditorium exploded. "You are lying! You are jealous of me!" screamed David. "Security, throw him out!" "Relax, David." I stood up and stood next to Hector. "Mr. Owens is not lying. It was I who provided him with the evidence." David looked at me, incredulous. His ex-fiancée and his stepbrother, his two greatest enemies, united against him. "Ashley, have you betrayed me?" "Betrayed?" I laughed. "The traitor is you. You betrayed my love, the trust of this company and your own conscience. Now it is time for you to pay for it." I signaled the auditors. They projected all the evidence on the giant screen, the fake contracts with Courtney's trembling signature, the messages bribing the auditor, the recordings of their conversations. Courtney, seeing it, fainted. David stood petrified, sweating buckets. He knew he was finished. "Fellow shareholders," I said into the microphone, "does a liar and a scammer like David deserve to run this company?" "No!" everyone shouted. Insults and water bottles rained down on him. David collapsed, kneeling on the floor. At that moment, my father entered the room. I declare, he said with a thunderous voice, the immediate dismissal of David Owens as Director of Operations and the referral of this case to the police. And I am pleased to present to you the new General Director of the Valoria Group, my daughter, Ashley Miller. The auditorium exploded in deafening applause. While the echo of the clapping still resonated, the main door opened again. A group of police officers entered. "Who is David Owens and Courtney King?" asked the chief inspector. David, seeing them, tried to flee, but he tripped and fell. 2 agents handcuffed him. "David Owens, you are under arrest for embezzlement, document forgery, and fraud." The sound of the handcuffs was his sentence. He looked at me pleadingly, but my face was ice. Courtney, who had just woken up, tried to escape screaming her innocence, but was detained. "Ashley, save me. I don't want to go to jail." I walked up to her. She now looked like a cornered mouse. "Courtney, I warned you. You chose the easy path, trampling on others. Now you have to pay the price. No one can save you, only yourself." The police cars left. My father calmed the shareholders and announced a new era for Valoria under my leadership. Next to him and Hector, I looked out the window. The sun was coming out after the storm. A new beginning awaited me. Epilogue. 3 months later, David and Courtney's case was sentenced. Both received prison sentences for their crimes. David's arrogance vanished in jail. His family disowned him. Courtney, for her part, was destroyed, her future stained forever. Under my direction, and with Hector's help, the Valoria Group prospered. One day, I received a letter from David from prison. In it, he asked for forgiveness, acknowledging that his greed had destroyed everything he had. I read the letter and put it away. I didn't forgive him, but I let go of the hate. A year later, at my father's 60th birthday party, we also celebrated Valoria's success, now one of the largest companies in the country. "Are you happy, daughter?" my father asked me. "Very happy, Dad," I replied, resting my head on his shoulder. One day, while driving, I saw Courtney in the rain at the same bus stop where it all started. She was wearing a street sweeper's uniform, looking haggard. The one who was once the arrogant Moonlight was now a shadow of herself. My heart shrank. The hate had transformed into compassion. I stopped, got out with an umbrella, and gave her some money. "Here, buy yourself something warm. We all make mistakes. The important thing is knowing how to get up." She cried, grateful and regretful. In that moment, I knew I had truly closed that chapter. Years later, recognized as one of the most influential businesswomen in Europe, I was asked in an interview what my secret was. "Never betray yourself," I replied. "Turn pain into strength." "And have you found your safe harbor?" asked the young journalist. I smiled. My safe harbor was my family, my work, my freedom. I looked to the side of the set. There, a man was waiting for me with a bouquet of sunflowers and a warm smile. It was Brian, a partner and friend who had been by my side for years, waiting patiently. "I think," I said, looking at the camera, "that my spring has just arrived." We walked out of the studio together. The morning sun shone over the city. It was a new day. I am Ashley Miller. I fell. I suffered. I lost. But I got up, stronger and more radiant than ever. This is my life, and I am the only one who writes her story.